Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the New Ground Life and Leadership Podcast, here to help you thrive as a follower of Jesus, wherever you are and whatever you're going through. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Alex Johnson, who's a professional freelance drummer and part of JCC, Jubilee Community Church, part of New Ground Churches. And we're going to be having a conversation today about his life and faith and what it looks like to be a Christian in the world of rock music and being a rock star. So Alex, great to have you with us.
Hey.
Thanks for joining us today. Why don't you just introduce yourself to our listeners and tell us a bit about what you do?
Sure. Well, as Jez said, my name's Alex, and for the last 8+ years I've been playing drums in bands and for artists and touring around a bit. That's kind of what I'm doing to date.
And so how did you get into drumming and being able to do that as a job? I imagine that sounds like a lot of teenage boys kind of dream, and you're living it. So tell us about how you turned a hobby into a profession.
I think it started when I went to music college. I did a year at music college in Brighton, at BIM, for those of you who know the area. And that was like my first proper year of like music education, you could say. And I just loved it. I loved like playing with other people. I loved playing drums. And I knew I just wanted to do it more. So after that, I then moved up to London and studied in London for 4 years. And over those 4 years, I played in various bands and, got better, like went to jam nights and played with loads of people, met loads of people. And then I kind of just like eventually fell into a band that started doing really well, by no intention of my own, but like started playing with a bunch of really talented guys, and got picked up by a record label out in America and started touring in the US, supporting various bands, and eventually did our own tour in the States. I'd like to say it was like the master plan and deliberate, but it really wasn't. It was just one of them sort of lightning in a bottle kind of moments.
Yeah, so for several months or years you were on tour, were you?
Yeah, so there was a period of time when the band was going really well that we were touring quite a bit. So we did like a number of tours around the UK supporting various acts, and then we were really fortunate to go out to the States and support a band called the 1975. We did that for I think that was like nearly 8 weeks, but we covered the whole of North America on that tour, which was insane. That was like, I guess that was living the dream in that moment.
Yeah, wow. Tell us, what's it like being on tour with a band? Is it everything you hoped it would be? Did it live up to those expectations?
Yes and no. Like brilliant, but also like an insane amount of traveling and very long journeys. When we did it like the first time, when we were supporting like a much bigger band, we did it on like a nice tour bus, and it was great because you just wake up in the next city. But when we did our own tour around there, it was like just a small Sprinter van, and it's like 9-hour drives through the desert in the middle of nowhere all day, and then it's very much less glamorous.
Well, and so tell us as well, when you became a Christian, and then how your faith has had an impact on you getting into music, and then we'll come on to talk about what it's like being a Christian in that industry. But just start telling us the influence that church and faith has had on your life.
Sure. So like my mum took me to church from like a young age. So I've always been in the church and exposed to church culture and Christian culture. And I couldn't put my finger on it, but there was a point, definitely a moment, probably in my teens, where I made a commitment and decided that I wanted this faith for myself, not just because I was in the environment. And that's kind of like, I mean, as with anyone's faith, it comes in peaks and troughs, and there are moments where you feel like you're recommitting, and moments where you feel like I'm trying my best. So like, and in terms of like music and that, I think the church was brilliant in encouraging me to like play in like youth band or playing in a Sunday morning, like even when I was terrible, just the encouragement of the church there was great. And then what was the rest of the question?
Well, no, it's just so, yeah, I think it's really helpful. So are there other Christians in the band when you're on tour in the States, for example? Were there other Christians in the band with you? And then tell us about that environment and some of the challenges you may have faced as someone, like you said. That's quite a helpful description of being a Christian. It comes in peaks and troughs, trying to live consistently for Christ in a hostile environment. What was that like? Talk to us a bit about that.
Yeah, it was tough. It was like really great because like, so I was the only Christian in the band I was in. But they're all like great guys, great people, like doesn't detract from like how they were as people. But yeah, like you say, there are different challenges that then come with that. And I think the big there was definitely time where like I'm like, oh, could have been better there, or oh, could have done better there. And I was actually like reflecting on that this morning, knowing we were going to talk about these times. And I think the biggest thing to bear in mind is that that's like the greatest trick the enemy will want to pull on you, is to sort of call yourself a Christian, or oh, you messed up there. And I think in like when you're a less mature Christian, those times really hit you. They're like gut punches almost, and you feel gutted and like, oh, that's everything. But I think what God has taught me, and what I'm still learning, is that there's still you've never lost your chance. You know, you've never done too much damage that God can't still work through you or shine through you in the situation that you're in. And I think carrying that forward, like through my career and through touring and through working with other people, it's built me up, like that sort of learning that. So it's not always easy, but there are like great moments too. And like I've definitely survived as long as I have in the industry because of my faith.
Because of your faith. Talk to us about that. What do you mean?
I think, simply prayer and having people to pray with me through it. It's like there was a time sort of like I don't play in that band anymore, and it was great. It came to kind of a natural end, but there was a time where we were going through so much legal difficulty with like management and record labels and stuff like that, and it was very overwhelming because you play music to be a musician, and I play drums to be a drummer, not to sort of like have to pour through contracts and this and that, and months of litigation for whatever it is. And so it was actually like, I was really lucky to have like an amazing small group that I'm part of, that like just praying for me in that situation, to give me peace in that situation, and it not just to completely wipe me out and want to give up.
You talked before when we spoke several weeks ago now about the challenge of isolation, perhaps when you are on tour or when you are in an environment that, like you said, with great guys you get on really well with, but not necessarily going to fuel your faith for you and help you follow Jesus faithfully, in an environment where, again, you described to me just there being a steady stream of beer and wine available freely, and the tendency when you're on tour is to just begin every day with drinking. Talk to us about that culture and some of the challenges that isolation from a Christian community when you're not presumably in church brought.
I think things that aren't normal become very normal quickly. I think I said to you, like, it can sometimes feel like a bit of a holiday when you're on the road, because you're kind of away, you're away, you're not home, you're like, especially when like I was going to America or somewhere like just abroad, it really does feel like that. There is a work element to it, but like, I would say that you ask 10 musicians if it felt like work when they're on the road, like, most of them would say no, it's great fun. It's like you're doing exactly what you want to do. But yeah, it's strange because you can get in, you go on holiday and you're like, oh yeah, cool, right, well, I'll just have a beer, or I'll just do this, and it doesn't matter. And it's very easy to fall into the trap of like doing something like drinking more than you normally would, and that's weird. It's like a very weird thing to slip into, but then also like it's something you definitely need to like make sure you don't stay in, and like, because you won't last 8 weeks on the road if you're gonna consistently like drink too much alcohol. But what I do in that situation, or what I have done is like, I always make sure I have friends that I can text or call that I know are there for me. I have a brilliant wife who like will always call me when I'm on the road and like just check in on me and stuff like that. I think it's so important just to like, when you're in isolation, to know that there are people you can reach out to. And then, if you've had a rough show or something, things are going wrong, you're just like, oh, can you just pray about this? Because I'm like, feeling down, or, oh, this is going on, can you pray about this for me? And just having good people around you that can like send you verses, send you scripture, send you words of knowledge, just be praying for you. Like, that's so important.
Yeah, I completely can understand that. Talk to us about the impact that church has had then on your life before that, and how have you come to appreciate and rely on church? Were there times where you wandered away from faith or wandered away from a Christian community and realized I need that in my life? Particularly, I think over the past year, we've all known that experience of church being online and inaccessible, but in proper form with people in person. We've all come to realize our need for it, perhaps to some degree. But talk to us about your relationship with the church growing up and that.
So I think church, like I said to you, church growing up has been a big part of my life since I was young. Like when I was younger, my mum suffered from like mental health difficulties for a period of time, and like the church really like pulled around us. I was just brought up by my mum, so it's just the two of us. But the church really pulled around us in terms of like people bringing us into their home and looking after me, making sure I got to school and things like that when my mum was struggling. So from a young age, it was very practical, like definitely spiritual as well, but I'm not so aware of it like at those ages, I guess. But yeah, then I guess as I got older, it is like that push and pull of the world that you get when you're growing up and you're trying to find your own feet in who you are as your own person. And you are just sort of, it's almost like you can be being tugged on both arms, like where's my balance? How do I balance it? What is safe for me to be in? What is actually going to like pull me off the right track? And so, yeah, I've definitely had moments like that. And I think I've really, really felt that I'm definitely like a feeler in the way, like I can be quite emotional. Maybe that's like just the creative in me, but like, yeah, like definitely moments of like feeling like depressed because I've spent too long away from the church. And, there is definitely something to be said. And I guess, like you said, a lot of people have experienced that over the last 18 months, that when you're away from that, like home, that family environment, it is sad, and you can feel that sadness. So yeah, that's what it feels like when I'm away. When I'm back, it's great. Like, and definitely the last, I guess, like 8 years of my life have been in that place where I'm really pushing into church and the community, and know that it's wholly beneficial for me. Then just go and do my own thing.
Yeah, and I think what you described there about this push and pull, again, every new Christian, every young person experiences that. What would be some advice to like almost your teenage self who's experiencing that push and pull, and even then entering that world of professional music on tour? What would be some advice to people who are trying to navigate that line, perhaps university students in a similar culture where drink is such a part of the environment that people are in? What would be some of your advice there?
Get someone to disciple you. I think having someone that's not necessarily like loads older than you, could be like, but someone that's certainly like way more mature in their faith, that has possibly done like the same things as you want to do or whatever. But yeah, like as Paul said, like a spiritual father, like have someone that's going to like lead you through your faith and through scripture and through prayer, someone that will teach you how to pray, someone that will teach you how to like unpack the Bible. I think on like a one-to-one basis, not just on like a Sunday morning in church, but yeah, I think that real like intimate teaching that you can have with a friend, or it is just so invaluable. So that's what my advice would be.
That's brilliant. Thank you. And is that something you sought out yourself, or did people come and approach you for that?
Yeah, there was a time, I think I mentioned to you before, where I was like leaving an old band and ended up going into the band that like took me, around the world. And there was a big moment for me, but there was a guy that I'd been praying with regularly, and just like sort of he'd give me counsel, and he was always like the guy, and he always had time for me. And I remember like the evening where I like told that old band, like, I want to leave. Before I did that, I went and prayed with him, and we prayed about it, and it just gave me that refilling, that courage and the strength to like, take the path that seemed so difficult to take, because the thing I was in was so bright and shiny and looked fantastic, but there was also the part of me that knew it wasn't the best way for me to go. So yeah, that was a guy called Phil. Brilliant guy. Like wouldn't have like made half as many good decisions if it hadn't been for him. He's also like a fantastic drummer, musician as well. So there was that there.
That's brilliant. So you found a Christian mentor who was a drummer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, like, that's the brilliant thing about being in London, is that you can find a church where there are so many fantastic musicians in. It's full of them. Like it's full of like creatives, and there's a big, I'd say, Christian musician community in London, for sure.
That's really helpful. Thank you. Shout out to Phil then.
Yeah.
And I would imagine for yourself, growing up in an environment that you said was just you and your mum, the church presumably played quite a large role in revealing kind of older brothers, fathers, uncles as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, I think over the years it's just I mean, there's so many names, whether it's been like youth leaders or worship leaders or pastors or whoever, like, there's always been people there that have pulled alongside me and my mum as well. And I think, yeah, I don't know, I guess, like, thank God for those people that we're not a part of a community that's passive and just lets people get on. As the church, we want to lift each other up and build each other up. And I don't know how much deeper I can go into it, other than just like they were brilliant, and like thank God for those people.
Oh, that's fantastic. I think it's a really important encouragement to anyone who's holding that tension between the like, as you describe it, the push and pull of the world, and trying to find your place in the world, trying to find your feet with your faith, so to speak, for anyone. It's really important, as you said, to have people who do mentor us and disciple us and speak into our lives, to open ourselves up to that. So I remember you said, as you alluded to there, you were in a band but felt God speak to you about leaving that band, which then led to you being part of this other group that resulted in you traveling the world and experiencing life as a full-time professional drummer. And what I love in talking to you and hearing your story as well is the way that you're making it clear for us that God is interested in every part of our lives, and there isn't a secular and sacred divide in the world. That what you're doing as a drummer is a kingdom activity, and you're there as an ambassador of Christ. Talk to us about what it is, what that motivates you, and is kind of you felt as a call, if you'd use that word, or as a drive to get into drumming and pursue that as a profession. What was it for you that motivates you and keeps you going?
Like, I just absolutely love it. And I think that anything that you really love, like music and art, or whatever it is, like if you're like way cleverer than me, numbers or science, stuff like that, like whatever you're really passionate about, I feel like God puts that in you, and it's something that you're created with. So I think for me, like I'm just trying to like be excellent at what God has given me, and I feel like that for me at this time is like being a drummer, being creative, being a musician. And I think you honor God by pursuing the things that he's given you, or the talents he's given you and made you good at. Like that glorifies God. The fact that I practice, glorifies God as much as you hate practicing when you're young, it's actually brilliant, and it does you the world of good. And that honors God and that glorifies God in what he's given you. So I think, yeah, like I said, I don't know, I kind of just fell into it professionally, but I think I always just loved doing it because that's just how I was made.
Wow, that's a really good answer. I mean, it reminds me of Eric Liddell's famous quote that everyone uses, that when I run, I feel God's pleasure. And like you said, you honor God with the gifts that he's given you and using them in the different spheres that he places you. So you mentioned earlier that you're married. So talk to me about marriage and life on tour and the challenges that that brings.
Yeah, I mean, you just have to have a really patient wife.
Patient or long suffering?
Oh yeah, yeah. They become one and the same, I think, especially with a drummer as a husband.
Are you one of those drummers who sits at the dinner table banging his fingers on the desk, on the table, in different rhythms?
Yeah, there's so I can hear rhythms in most things. The dishwasher will be going, and I'll be like nodding along to it. It's silly like that. Yeah, no, she's amazing. I think like it really works for us because we met at a time where I was really pursuing what I was doing, like playing in a band. You know, I actually joined the band that I stayed with for a long time, kind of the similar time as we started dating. So like from the get-go, there was always this very honest conversation, like I love this, like I really love this, and I'm going for this, and I also love you, and I want to go for this as well. Like, can we make it work? And you know, and we decided that we could. So I think my advice would be, if you're young and not married or dating or whatever, is just be open. If your dream is to like tour and see the world, as difficult as that is at the moment, like just be honest with your partner about that, and just like yeah, make sure they're aware, so that when it comes to you going away for months at a time, it's not out of the blue or like unexpected. That's what I'd say. Like from the get-go, we kind of knew what could happen. And yeah, and my wife was like she studied languages, so she did like time like a year out as well. So we were kind of like well practiced at like long distance. So yeah, we sort of were trained in that from an early stage.
Yeah, and what would be some of your just tips on how to maintain good health in a marriage like that then, when you are apart for a length of time?
Stay in contact. Like yeah, as hard as it is, but if you're like, you know, in a different country, time zones and that suck, but like just make the time, even if it means you have to wait up till 2 a.m. just to say good morning and have a good day at work. Do that. Surprise them with flowers. That's what I did once. She's in fact so surprised that she didn't believe they were from me, because it's something that I'd not really done before. So she's like, surely not. So yeah, I don't know whether that
like
was...
you said, I did that once.
yeah.
Once upon a time. Sounds like you should do it more regularly.
Yeah. Well, I haven't been too far away since then, so
okay.
It's been a better. But yeah, no, you're right. I probably almost certainly should do that more regularly anyway. But yeah, I don't know. Like we're such good friends, so like it's natural for us to talk to each other a lot. And so obviously, I guess any husband and someone who's been in a relationship for a long time will tell you communication is so important. And I think just keeping in touch, just make the time sacrifice or the sleep sacrifice to call your other half and just let them know that you love them and you miss them.
And what's your life look like now? Because you mentioned I don't think you're with that band that you were on tour with now. You're more, so to speak, freelance as a drummer. So what does that look like for you?
Well, you know, it's like, it's weird talking about this now because I'm only just starting to do that again.
Yeah, I imagine after the pandemic. Yeah.
So, you know, I was kind of freelance anything for 18 months. You know, if you've got work, I'll go and do it. You know, just trying to get by. But what it looks like now is I'm about to go away for a couple of weeks just around the UK with a new artist, and so that just involves rehearsing long hours in a rehearsal studio, and then more learning when I get home to make sure remember everything that I've rehearsed. And then going off again. So going off mostly involves sitting on motorways in the van and then playing some music.
So you're playing. What is the artist? Someone that anyone would know?
Probably not. Like she's very like kind of like up and coming. She's just released her first album, but it's very it's cool. I love it. It's very like chilled out electronic kind of music. She's got a fantastic voice as well, and it's really fun to play.
Wow. So you've not, I don't know if you met her, but in theory you're often playing music for musicians and artists that you've not spent much time with before, turning up to their shows or rehearsing with them, having only just learnt their music by yourself at home. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is the case for a lot of things. Like, fortunately, I've never done anything that's required me just to show up and play completely cold. I've always been like lucky enough to have at least one rehearsal before going off and playing. But yeah, it can. I've got friends that are just like had to learn music like on the train and then go and play the show. Yeah, lots of brilliant musicians have to do that. I just thank myself lucky that I haven't had to do that yet, because I don't know.
That must be pretty nerve-wracking when you do that.
Yeah, right.
And so you mentioned you spent a lot of time on the road with band members. That must afford you some opportunities to share your faith and talk about Jesus with people. Is that sort of thing that band members talk about on their lonely nights and their trips on the roads, on stuck on the M25 and things? Have you had any notable moments like that?
I think there have been times like I think people are just generally curious. I think when you're someone like me who's grown up in church or a church environment like my entire life, you forget that people have actually had the complete opposite experience. And so they just don't know what church is. They may have like a preconceived idea, and that like it's interesting to people know Christmas carols and they'll go for Christmas, or potentially Easter if their aunt goes to church, something random like that. But it's very rare that people understand like the community and the faith like element, like how interpersonal and personal it can be. So I think like most conversations just tend to be more like, oh, you do that, oh that's cool, oh you do that, oh that's cool. Like it's not just hymns and organs. There's a lot more going on.
I imagine you break most people's preconceived ideas of what a Christian is when they meet you. If they've
Hopefully
not sorry?
Hopefully in a good way.
And so I think you said before that you've had songs on FIFA soundtracks and Netflix, and you've played in front of crowds of several thousand. What is that quite a nerve-wracking experience, playing in such large auditoriums with so many people listening? How do you prepare yourself for something like that?
Usually I don't eat before because I'm like so nervous. Like when we did like our first ever like big show like that, I don't think I could sit still for the whole hour leading up to it, and I couldn't eat anything. I was like sipping water. I was like the adrenaline was just insane. But once you get up there and you sit down, and for me it was always after 2 songs. I played 2 songs and then I'd feel comfortable. But yeah, it's crazy. Like there's nothing quite like it when you see just that many people. I'd never like when I was first doing it, I'd never experienced that, and it was just it was really cool, but very very nervy at the same time.
And I imagine the pressure's really on you as a drummer, because it is the one instrument people would probably notice most if it was out of time, and the whole band would probably fall apart if there was not that timekeeping part of the performance.
Yeah, I think between drummers and electric guitarists, you're the most likely to drop absolute clangers that everyone will notice. In terms of like just loud, intrusive noises that you weren't supposed to make. So sometimes you can definitely feel like, oh, I have to make sure I get this part right, otherwise everyone's gonna know.
I think you on our last conversation you called it the most distracting instrument in the band, which maybe a lot of people would agree with anyway.
Yeah, I think certainly like a lot of church congregations would say that the drums are maybe the most distracting.
The one that people have the most arguments and discussions about, the volume of it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. That's why most of us are kept in boxes in most churches that you go to.
Yeah, control the sound as much as you can. Don't let the
Yeah.
drummer out, because
Yeah.
drummers are uncivilized creatures. Not in your case, I'm sure, Alex. How do you handle the pressure though of being that, playing that instrument? Is it just a question of rehearsing as much as you can? Are there things that you've learned about pressure management generally?
You know, the best bit of advice I ever got was from my mate Phil again, who I told you about before. And it was when I was on the road in America and things were going wrong. It wasn't like what we were playing, but like there was one night where we were using tracks and the track just failed in it. And then there was one time where my monitor pack just kept on cutting out, like, which is less than ideal when you're playing to a click track and things. And I was like, oh, can you just like pray that this stops happening? Can you just like pray that it stops happening? And he was like, yeah, sure. But he was like, but you know, also know that God has prepared you to like handle these situations as well. And it just like shifted my focus from just being like asking God to take things away to knowing that I'm prepared to handle it. And I think that became transferable off the stage as much as on the stage.
That's really good. That's a great vision. It reminds me of what Jesus said to the apostles. Don't, you know, you'll be dragged in front of officials and magistrates on account of me, and the Holy Spirit will give you the words to say at the moment. That there is a preparation that goes on beforehand, but there's also an equipping of the Spirit in those things. And just as Bezalel was gifted by the Spirit with creativity, we do forget that God is interested in the practical and the creative aspects of all of our lives, not just the proclamation of the gospel, that he prepares you along the way. Oh, Alex, it's been such a joy talking with you and hearing a bit about life as a professional drummer. Is there anything else in your heart and mind at the moment, just as we are going to draw things to a close, that you'd want to either encourage someone who's looking to get into this, or just something that the Lord's spoken to you about or taught you recently?
I mean, if you want to get into this kind of thing, yeah, just keep working at it, keep praying, meet people, be discipled, be a disciple. Yeah. Like make sure it can be a volatile industry, and it is also very unforgiving at times as well. And I think drawing that support early is key. Really good. Just have people you can pray with and go to and give you advice. There are loads of people out there. I'm sure anyone that wants to get into this will know someone that they can go to and pray with. And in terms of what God's speaking to me about, it's just knowing who you are in him, like your identity. Know that is sealed in Jesus and what he did. And just really push into that in times of struggle, in good times, that like just know that your life is hidden in Christ. And yeah.
That's superb. Thank you so much. What a great place to leave it as an encouragement for people. Alex, thanks so much for your time. I pray that your tour goes well around the UK, and I look forward to hearing more of your tracks on FIFA and the like, and looking out for you in the band as you come on tour.